Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Morning in the Valley. It is Monday, September the 8th, with 8 being the magic number. We are 8 Mondays away from the opening of the 2025-26 season. 56 days from November the 3rd. Cannot wait. Feels like we're on the fast track right now to opening day, and cannot wait for that. Today, we were going to talk with Rocco Miller. He is the bracketing guru who really is involved in. He's kind of you could almost describe him as the Kramer of college basketball. Like I'm not sure what it is he does, but he is incredibly active behind the scenes, trying to sort of play matchmaker in a lot of ways, for whether it's in with some MTE work, trying to find teams to fill those, whether it is just trying to bring teams together in the non-conference for home and homes or one-offs and so on. So very active in that space, and he's got some big ideas for 26, 27 and beyond. So we'll talk with him about all that. Our conversation from Friday, got a chance to catch up with him. So we'll have that for you here in just a couple of minutes. If you haven't done so, please go to YouTube and subscribe for free to our channel there. Morning in the Valley, all the old shows, clips, everything you could want, separated, broken down by individual schools, so you can go check out your favorite school, find the interviews with the coaches and players we've done there. So really would help us continue to grow here, and greatly appreciate all of your support so far. All right, let's get into enough of me yammering. Let's get to some headlines of the day. And how about Roger Powell at it again, as he's got his second commitment for the class of 2026, as he has signed gotten a commitment rather, from a 3-star guard, Justin Curry, out of Noblesville, Indiana. 6'4" combo guard, offered June the 25th, didn't take long, and ultimately Curry decides he wants to be a beacon. Last couple of months, he has had a handful of offers, some from within the Valley. Murray State, Ryan Miller offered him, as well as Nevada, UT Martin, Iona, among others. The part that I found interesting is when you see kids post on social media about their offers, and you see them, say, it is very, and I think in a lot of ways, very purposely done, that there is a cookie cutter aspect to, I am blessed to receive an offer from such and such a school. Can't wait to learn more about your program. It's usually something in that realm of again, it's very much a template. And if you go by school by school by school, offer by offer by offer, it's the same thing. It's like they just copy paste, pull out old school, put in new school, pull out old coach, put in new coach, and it's like it's very hard to see sort of a hand tipping of, oh, I'm really excited about this, as opposed to maybe less excited about that one. Justin Curry is not. There's a relative template, but there's some tweaks that he puts to each of his offer posts on X, and some of them were like, hey, after a great talk, I had or after a nice visit, after a great time, whatever it may have been. But there was always a little tweak. But the thing that jumped out to me about the post he made on June 25th about his offer from Roger Powell was, he wrote, after an inspirational visit with coaches. I don't know that I have ever seen a kid on a post touting a scholarship offer talk about the inspirational visit that he had. Roger Powell is not called the Rev for nothing. And he can sell water to dolphins, most certainly. But you listen to him talk, whatever setting he may be in, and whether it's forward facing to the media, whether it's kind of pull the curtain back behind the scenes, talking to his team in the locker room when they're going through their summer stuff, you're like, yep, that's a dude I want to go run through a wall for. And so I probably, if you're reading tea leaves a couple of months ago, a flag probably should have gone up after the inspirational visit with Justin Curry and the Valparaiso coaches. But the 3-star guard has committed to the Beacons, and congratulations to him, and congratulations to Coach Powell for grabbing a second commitment in the class of 2026. A little less pomp and circumstance, a little more straightforward out of Ian Thomas from St. Louis, Missouri. DeSmet Jesuit He has committed to Indiana State. The 6'4" point guard is heading to Terre Haute, and it's interesting now. This is twice in the last couple of weeks that remember Kent Williams, the former SIU All-Star. All-Star doesn't even, he will have his jersey hanging in the rafters of the Banterra Center at some point soon. He is the head coach at DeSmet Jesuit there in St. Louis. And it was just a couple of weeks ago, one of his players, Jordan Boyd, who had an offer from Southern Illinois, opted to commit to Northern Iowa. And now he has another player in Ian Thomas who had an offer from Southern Illinois, who is now going elsewhere in the Valley to Indiana State. And so no one can accuse Coach Williams of steering anyone to Carbondale, for sure, even though the folks at Carbondale might like a little steering. But if nothing else, it just shows what a program they got rolling there at DeSmet Jesuit, that he is just pumping out kids at the Missouri Valley Conference level. Ian Thomas, again, is the latest. Last 9 months, he's had offers from Drake, from Valpo, from SIU, from Edwardsville, from Austin Peay, and obviously from Indiana State, who just came in a little late. They got here in late June, and Coach Matthew Graves able to land the plane with Ian Thomas. Drake has announced the signing of LJ Rush. He was the 2026 recruit who committed to Drake and then reclassified, so he is ready to roll now. He is on the roster, and when you look at, look, again, it's September 8th, but we have seen an ever-increasing number of late additions to rosters. And you've seen some teams, for one reason or another, I don't know that it's necessarily anything nefarious in any way, but sometimes schools are not going all the way to 15 in this era of the House settlement, where you've got the roster limit of 15, and it's just giving you an opportunity to. You've seen some schools, with 12, even 13, 14, just give themselves some late flexibility if an option becomes available. And I think with LJ Rush, he came available. Drake only had 12 at the time, so. Eric Henderson certainly had some space to be able to add some folks to his roster, and able to go get LJ Rush out of North Carolina, played at 1-of-1 prep there in North Carolina, one of the top point guard, if not the top point guard prospect in that 2026 class. And now he comes a year early in 2025, again, on the roster, ready to roll. 3-star point guard, and we'll see what kind of impact he will be able to have. Obviously missed the summer, getting there a little bit late, but we'll see what kind of impact he is able to have this season with Eric Henderson's Bulldogs in his first year there in Des Moines. Some scheduling news. We've seen the full schedules thrown out periodically from most every school. There's a couple hangers on right now. One of those is Northern Iowa. We have not gotten the full schedule yet from UNI. Well, NIU has released their schedule. Northern Illinois. And we have learned another piece to UNI's non-conference schedule, as they will host. Northern Iowa will host Northern Illinois coming up on November the 18th. Northern Illinois also going to be at Bradley on December the 6th. We knew about the Bradley game from when Bradley released their schedule, but really for both these schools, this is a wonderful addition to the non-conference schedule from a metric standpoint. Bart Torvik projections having Northern Illinois at 297 this year are kind of right where you want them. And this is a program that just, historically not great. And that's where you just kind of look at, are they going to be better than 297? You would be hard pressed. They have been the last year they were at 343. I mean, one of the bottom 20 teams in the country. The last 20 years, they have been in the top 200 just 5 times. But the last 5 years, it has been consistently in that 300, 320, 340 range. So metrically, this appears to be a good game for both Northern Iowa and Bradley. We'll see how it ultimately shakes out. Again, Northern Iowa schedule should just about be done. We should be getting that full release here in the very near future. And again, if you are late to the party, I had more questions again last night about it, about asking about the conference schedule in the Missouri Valley Conference. It's coming. Obviously, it is coming. But again, just even last year, it's September the 8th. Last year, that schedule came out on September the 20th. So we're still 2 weeks away from that. It's coming. It's just a matter of when can they get all those I's dotted and T's crossed. But nothing imminent, but be prepared. It will be here sooner than later. And look, we need it soon. We're 8 weeks out. I know there's a lot of director of ops around the leagues getting antsy because there's hotels to be booked and planes to be booked. And meals to be bought and pre-bought and all that stuff. And so the quicker they can get that out, the better. But a lot of conferences have been able to release their conference schedules here really in the last month or so. Still a lot that haven't. The Valley's not necessarily behind the times. It's just it feels louder when you see other conferences putting out their schedules. Valley has not, but I would expect it here within the next 2 weeks. Hopefully, fingers crossed here within the next 2 weeks. Okay. Time now for our guest today, and that is Rocco Miller. Bracketeer.org is where you can find his work. Find him on X at Rocco Miller 8. And he was the guy that dropped the little Northern Illinois nugget the other day. He is, again, very, very, very involved on the scheduling side of things, especially the non-conference side for teams all over the country. And got a chance to catch up with him on Friday, and we talked scheduling. We talked about scheduling trends, in the Missouri Valley, what we've seen this year now that most non-conference schedules have been released from within the league on the men's side. We talked about the Players Era Festival and MTE, sort of the infrastructure falling apart, and mid majors and Missouri Valley teams not getting opportunities on neutral floors like they once did, getting a chance to play Power 4 schools, because those Power 4 schools are kind of going their own way. And whether it's the Players Era Festival, whether they're running their own MTEs, where they're just playing each other, it's getting harder and harder. So we talked with Rocco about how that can be combated, and also, because what else have we done for the last month? Picked his brain a little bit on the rumors of potential expansion in the Missouri Valley Conference, and whether we get next year. Do we get to 12? Do we get to 14? Do we stay pat at 11? We talked to all things in that realm with Rocco Miller. So here is my conversation from Friday with the great Rocco Miller. Well, let us welcome into the two-time club here on Morning in the Valley. He is Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org, and he is also of all the guests we've had so far since we started this in April, he is the only guest to not do it once, but twice, wear a sports jacket to this ridiculous show. So we appreciate the formality. Rocco, how are you this morning?
Got to stay professional, Jeff. Great to be back on with you. I'm honored to be a two-time guest. Hopefully we can just keep the train rolling, because I wake up in the morning nearly, even in the off season, thinking about the Valley. So it's an amazing special league, and it's the soul of college basketball, really, for several reasons. A lot of the historical teams in the league, at least, and Murray State and Belmont are perfect fits, I think, going forward. Just with all the obviously more recent tradition for Belmont, but Murray State, all the above. So excited for the season. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. You said we're under 2 months to go before it's go time. So can't wait to get going. Right now, it's been the gathering of we started with the trickle, and now it's sort of people are presenting the full non-conference schedules, and you have been instrumental in a lot of that, doing some behind the scenes stuff, trying to match folks up and the MTE world and so on. I guess just from a 30,000 feet view of scheduling and mid majors this year, have you noticed any trends, I guess, best way to put it, of scheduling and maybe scheduling challenges that the mid majors have faced?
My biggest takeaway for this cycle, Jeff, is just the amount of times each school, mid-major and below, have needed to find a check, meaning a guarantee or a buy game. So in the past, you had the very low majors, even your Texas Southern examples, where they would just play nothing but guarantee games, which is what you saw this year, from places like New Orleans and a few of the SWACs. But I think, there is a level of teams closer to Murray State's where maybe you'll get bought once or twice, use that money for, upgrading your facility or improving your, something that your program could really use. Well, now that we're in the official, NIL pay, you need money to pay players model, there's so many teams that just went from like 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 0 to 2. There's Mountain West teams getting guarantee checks this year. And so to me, that was the biggest difference. It was very noticeable early and often. And I still have teams here today on September 5th calling me, seeing if there's still a team looking to buy a game so they can get more money into their program. And yeah, it's just kind of a sign of the times. It really is a semi-pro league or a set of 31 semi-pro leagues at various levels, drastically different revenue levels. And that's how scheduling is. It's all about aligning budgets. And, I think for us nostalgic followers of the sport, lovers of the sport, we want every team to have a path to an at-large. Like if you go undefeated or you go 29-3 or whatever, we want you to get in. And, there's just going to be so many schedules this year where, if you actually could go 29-3, you probably didn't play anybody. Because so some of the mismatches it's just going to be too hard to put a gaudy record up for a lot of these schools.
What I have noticed, I guess the trend with the Valley is that it feels like the outside, the power schools are saying the quiet part out loud in terms of they are, by who's getting bought and how many times they're getting bought, they are saying, we don't think you're going to be any good. We think you are going to be good. And speaking specifically, and he said it specifically, Ryan Miller at Murray State said, we could not get bought. He's like, we tried and no one would buy them. And he said, and he's like, I don't think it was necessarily that, hey, we're going to be great, but we're an unknown and whatever. But you look at the top of the Valley, Belmont didn't get bought. Bradley didn't get bought. I think somehow Illinois State got USC on a neutral site in Los Angeles, which is one of the coups really of the non-conference. But then you look, Valpo got bought 3 times. I think Indiana State got bought a couple times. Like the bottom teams are getting bought a lot. And so how do the top schools have to combat this? I mean, everything's through the prism of multi-bids, but just like from your seat, like how do you get games? How do you get games that are good enough to put together some sort of a resume when you don't have MTEs anymore and the big boys just don't seem that interested in playing you at all?
Well, it's interesting because the Valley started their scheduling mandate last year where you have to play at least 4 quad 1 or 2 games. Unless you're a new head coach, then you have to play 3. And I think that's really helped. I think it helped last year just in hindsight, bring the floor of the league up, if anything else. And I think at places like Bradley, like Drake, like Northern Iowa, some of they're healthy. They're healthy financially at some of these places in the top of the league. Murray State could be included there as well. And I think you don't have to go play at Purdue and get smoked on opening night like Evansville's going to do. Right. And so even within the league, there's varying expectations and budgets. Now, again, if I'm sure if Drake or Bradley were picked towards the bottom of the league, they might just take advantage of that for one season and go get a couple checks because they could. But basically, the top of the sport is looking at the Missouri Valley and all the other mid-major leagues as opportunities to go buy wins. So they're only going to buy those bottom-level teams from the league, like your Valpos and Evansvilles. And that's just based on projection alone and maybe a little bit of historical data. And so that's why you kind of see the chips fall where they have. With the regards to like Bradley, Drake, Murray State, even to some degree, they didn't have to go play those games. And so, yes, I'm sure all the calls were made and all the no's were received on the other end for getting bought. But at the same time, with the schedules that they built, if they hit it right, and they are, in fact, really good teams, which I think we expect at least a few of these to be really good teams, they could still go 12-1 in their non-conference. They could still go do what Drake did last year. I think Drake was undefeated last year. So that's still very doable by not having to go to Purdue, or I know Indiana State's going to Duke. Like those are definitely losses. So there's no wiggle room on those games. And so that's kind of there's a scale to all of this. And part of it's budget and part of it's your expected talent level. And Murray State's in an interesting spot because everybody's new. There's so much excitement. If you look on Torvik's Missouri Valley page, I don't know how much of the community looks at that, but we look at this a lot for scheduling because it kind of helps break any ties and it's a non-biased tool. Murray State's got a talent ranking of 42.3. The next highest team is actually Evansville at 28. And I don't know exactly how he computes the talent number, but I think just the sheer fact that Murray State's players are known and didn't come at a low price tag gives Murray State potentially the highest ceiling in the league. And for a team potentially giving them a check to come play them at home, that's about as dangerous as it gets.
The MTE world, as we've talked about before, it's the house of cards. It's starting to crumble a little bit when the big boys aren't interested in going anymore. I think we lost Myrtle Beach. We've lost Diamond Head. What the racers are going to Cayman Islands. When I was going back and looking through our text messages from when we talked a few months ago, and that was supposed to be an 8-team field. It's only 4 now. It's just how dangerous, I guess, maybe, and it's a strong word and probably hyperbolic on some level, but just to the sport. You've got this Players Era Festival that goes from 8 to 18 to 32 next year, and all these power schools are just going over there and collecting checks, and they're like, we don't need to go to Orlando or Daytona or wherever. Just it's really making it tough when you're trying to put these schedules together to give yourself a chance, right? And it's not getting better.
Right. Yeah. It's becoming increasingly more difficult, and it always has been getting more difficult. That trend has been going on for the last decade, I would say. And I think now what you can clearly see as an outsider looking in on scheduling is that the big boys, first of all, if you get invited to that thing, you got to go. And I talked to San Diego State, for example, all the time, and they were one of the first teams to sign up in the very beginning. And they're pretty sure, like, if they didn't get in early, they may have never got called back. And so, like, you just got to go. And I think in a lot of the cases, if you're like, I know, like, Rutgers is in that, right? They're not exactly the Big Ten powerhouse, but once they got the phone call, they're never going to give their spot up now. And that's just kind of the trickle-down effect. And we've lived in this MTE world, and that ends at the end of this year. And so I'm excited kind of for the new world of scheduling. But at the same time, I feel like the trend of mid-majors getting boxed out is only going to be even more exasperated, mainly because the future is going to be no required MTEs, but you're still going to have tons of destination events. I think they're still going to be really exciting. But I think what the Power 5 teams prefer from several of the ones I've talked to, I have not had one tell me otherwise, actually, is they just want to show up to these things and have their set matchups. And when they have their set matchups, they want their set matchups against Power 5s. So even that opportunity, that lottery ticket of getting into, like you said, the Myrtle Beach or the Charleston Classic and having a great week and playing somebody awesome like a Marquette for the title. I still think of that St. Bonaventure run a couple of years ago when they beat Marquette in the championship, and that was all possible because of a bracket. Even that goes away because brackets are going away as well, even at the other destinations. And so now the event space is really going to try to reinvent itself going forward, because going forward, we'll, instead of 31 games, if you play an MTE, otherwise you're capped at 29, we now go to everybody can play 32, play as many MTEs or no MTEs if you want. But the calendar doesn't change. And I think that's why it's an exciting opportunity. And you got to be able to pack those games in the same amount of calendar window, the 6 or 7 weeks of November, December, not counting finals. So that will be very fascinating to me. But I do think for the Missouri Valley, especially the strength of the Missouri Valley, the best thing that could happen is us create some basketball festivals where we can get the best of the WCC, the A10, the American, and that's about as good as we can do. And I think, I'm going to take a large responsibility in that.
The power schools sort of boxing everybody else out, and it feels to your point there with the festivals and so on. It's almost like, all right, the best mids kind of have to box the lower mids out as well, just out of self-protectionism. I get just thinking, Murray State and Cayman, that they've got McNeese and George Washington and Middle Tennessee, those 1 to 150 schools. You get Drake's going to Destin, and off the top of my head, I think it's LSU and Georgia Tech and DePaul, and maybe those schools aren't going to be available, but for now you're like, hey, we can get power schools on the lower end. But to your point of talking to Jeff Jackson, the commissioner, a couple months ago, and we talked about alliances and so on. And he's like, we've got to find somebody that is good for us, and maybe going and playing the 12th best conference or the 13th best conference isn't good for us, and doing challenge series and so on. But these guys kind of have to, we got to open up our minds a little bit here, right? Because otherwise we're just, it's a dead end.
No doubt. And I think I think we need more February non-conference action, as hard as that sounds. And maybe that dream will never come to fruition as much as I want it to. But I'm encouraged by, there are a handful of high major games around Valentine's Day and early February. You probably saw that Memphis is going to Utah State on Valentine's Day. I think we need more of that, because I think you cannot deny, if you're a committee member, you cannot deny if, let's say Bradley goes and wins at St. Mary's on February 8th, right? All of a sudden, you have to take Bradley seriously, because if St. Mary's is what they've been the last 4 years, a top 7 seed, they've been a 5 seed multiple times. All of a sudden, you have a road win against them late in the year. There's all results are treated the same by the committee.
Right.
But at the same time, you just can't ignore something like that late in the year. I also think everybody across college basketball, no matter what league I talk to, agrees that teams are vastly different in the last 2 months of the season than they are in the first 2 months. And especially like now we're in the players are getting paid. We're in the portal era where more rosters than not are almost entirely new, anywhere from 5 to 12 newcomers. If you're lucky in this level, you'll have 3 or less. But that's not the norm. The norm's 5 to 12 newcomers. How long do you think it's going to take for them to finally hit their, what they really are? They need till January. So working on some ideas, and hopefully something sticks to where we could do a game or two on one of those early February weekends. We need the leagues to commit. I think the Valley's all in, which is great, and they've always been all in. We need the A10, we need the American, we need the Mountain West, we need the new Pac-12 if we can, which is going to be a tremendous basketball league. If we can get the top teams from those teams playing each other somewhere in the middle of the country for a weekend, that's going to help everybody. And so that's where me and some strategic partners, we're trying to get the attention. If we can do it by next year, even better. If it takes till 28, so be it. But those ideas need to continue to be looked at. And I think for the Valley, that new Pac-12, probably maybe a little too big of a swing of the bat, but that the up and coming WCC that just added UC San Diego yesterday, that could be a logical challenge. I think challenging the A10 would be awesome. But everybody's got to work together, not against each other.
It wasn't that long ago we had some silly thing called the Bracket Buster, which kind of gave
exactly it's like that.
And it's now it got ridiculous at the end where everybody was in it and there's 200. Like, we don't need that.
Too much.
Maybe without that label on it, is that sort of the vision of get 30 or 40, and you got to leave it open. So you have to the dates. So you probably have to predetermine who those 30 or 40 are in projections and so on.
Yep.
That's kind of the thought process of let's stick a game in February there.
Yeah. So one idea that I've been presented with, and I would sign off on, is you get anywhere between 16 and 24, and they have to be established early. So you get some of those are pretty obvious right now. So get those teams now, and then maybe after the portal closes next May or June, even finish the rest of the amount, because we'll know enough then to be dangerous. We'll probably miss on a couple. Like last year was tough. UC San Diego, Drake, you could easily miss on both. Drake had a new coach. UC San Diego snuck up on people, but most years I think you would get 4 of the best mids in the same pod, and maybe they could play each other too. If they only want to play one, that's still better than nothing.
Right.
And so that's one of the ideas getting tossed around. And of course, when you get to that point, it is like the old Bracket Buster. You're going to match the best with the best so they can have the biggest resume opportunity. I think once those schools are established, that example I just gave you is well before the conference schedule's done. So once those teams are done, it's very easy to schedule league games for the rest of the league on that same weekend. So with everybody's buy-in and everybody's, that's what it is. Everybody's got to be bought in from these different leagues. Once that's established, I think it's doable.
The Field of 68 event, is that it feels like it's growing. It's growing a little bit every year.
Yeah.
I mean, is that you see that as a positive, a net positive for mid majors? I mean, yes, it's November 3rd, but a positive for that side of things.
Oh, absolutely. I think both Field of 68 events are really, really well done and smart, and from a strategic standpoint. So the one that's going into year 3 is going to be the first weekend. It's just the Liberty, Florida Atlantic, Charleston combo, and they all got to host each other. I'm not sure which trio will come later or if that can continue, but all three teams got a chance to host. That first year, Florida Atlantic was obviously well inside the bubble. Liberty's always good. And Charleston was, I think, our number 2 or 3 mid-major team entering the season. So it started off with all three programs being awesome, and it built in a round robin against each other, which helped their schedule tremendously, I think, in all 3 seasons. And then here with the opening night idea, that got started last year, but I love the added idea to try to make it the 24-hour marathon eventually. So this first game between Queens and Winthrop will start at 8 a.m. Eastern. And so where I live in California, it'll start at 5 a.m. So there's no messing around on opening day. Everybody who's been craving college basketball, I don't care where you're from, they'll be watching Winthrop and Queens at 8 a.m. Eastern. And then you'll have really good games right after that with, I think, St. Bonaventure Bradley's right after that. And that is, I think, the best game on the whole slate. High Point versus Furman's another terrific game coming up after that. So yeah, and the games over in Sioux Falls will be excellent as well. Merrimack's sneaky good. So is Northern Arizona. So those won't be cakewalks for Drake or South Dakota State. And so I think, I think that concept in general has a lot of potential down the road. Obviously, if we want to make it a 24-hour, we might have to do a Sunday night midnight game in Hawaii. But hey, I would love to start the season there. So maybe we can do that next year.
The grenade that got dropped in Missouri Valley circles a couple weeks ago was the very serious discussion of expansion for 26-27, that going from 11 to 14 was the number that was thrown out. Jeff Jackson has said in the past, when Missouri State was leaving, like, look, I'm good with 11. We're not going to rush. We're not going to go crazy. It was kind of like, hey, let's look out west, see what maybe collapses, and we can rebuild and so on if need be. When we talked a couple of months ago and just talking about everything from a metric standpoint, it was like it's just as easy to everybody. The tide rises by getting rid of the bottom, and Missouri State was at the bottom last year instead of, hey, let's just really try to get the top really good. There are options out there, and I look at these options, and they're all in their own way bad ideas. And maybe it's what's the best of the bad ideas?
Well, I don't know if they're all bad. I think there's one bell of the ball that would mostly fit the footprint, and it is St. Thomas. They're opening a $200 million arena this year. The excitement is through the roof. They're only the second Division I school in the whole state. They have the city of St. Paul to themselves. Of course, University of Minnesota is in Minneapolis. But I don't think that's a secret anymore. I'm hearing WCC, Atlantic 10. I'm hearing maybe big dreams of Big East down the road because of their market. So they are clearly the realignment bell of the ball from a team, from that summit level or below. So I do think that would be a big time prize. I know with them maybe talking to WCC or some of these West Coast leagues here, it would be a package deal with Denver. That gets a little further away from the Valley. So we'll see what shakes out. But I do think St. Thomas holds some really good poker chips right now as they get entertained by each league that are interested. I think the Valley is in the mix there. But I do think, the rest of it is a little bit unknown. I do think, I was actually just sitting in yesterday on UC San Diego's a press conference to announce their move to the WCC. And it really kind of refocused my thoughts on what realignment requires. You need universities that are trending in the right direction, that are invested, that have had success. And obviously St. Thomas checks all those boxes. So, when you're thinking about potential suitors, ask yourself, do they check those boxes? If you're going down and grabbing another Ohio Valley, are there any teams that fit that mold? I don't know if there is. So you might have to think further outside the box. Can you pull a team out of the Atlantic 10? I don't know. Can you pull an up and coming basketball focused team. Is the Ivy League in play? Probably not. But yeah, I just think we're in a point in time in NCAA sports where there really are no limits. We have coast to coast leagues, so the mid majors starting to figure that out now too, and so I'm really, you can tell I don't have a really good clue outside of St. Thomas who else they could get to 14, but I think the league is smart enough to only add where it makes sense and where there's growth and great potential for the league.
I say bad ideas. It was more of you can punch holes in a lot of the places, of just like,
right.
Maybe more than, and St. Thomas seems to be number one. And I guess my thing with it is no matter who the addition is, they better not have football. And whether that's, and just the 10 names, or it's, Omaha, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Bellarmine, Northern Kentucky, Little Rock, like places that you're like, I don't know that this is going to work, but whoever it's going to be,
just
having
those
lived
places
through,
make some sense. Yeah,
having lived through the demolition of the Ohio Valley Conference when Austin Peay and Eastern Kentucky and Jacksonville State all left for football purposes because they want to go chase F. It's like we can't get into that game, no matter who it's going to be. And I feel like Commissioner Jackson is smart enough in that regard. You don't want to pull somebody in that 2 years later is like, oh, well, we're trying to go to Conference USA and be Missouri State again and go try and chase football money, even though they're not accepting, more. Things have changed in that realm with football, but I don't know. At 14 just feels like a lot. If we're trying to, everybody was so happy at 10 for so long in this league, and then it was like they got a little bloated at 12, and then 14 just feels like there may be more, for lack of a better phrase, fat that you're bringing in.
Absolutely, and that's the thing too, and it's a good foundation to think about realignment with. If you're just growing the pie for the sake of growing the pie, it doesn't make any sense, and the new member won't get approved. But if the revenue pie is getting heavy enough to where the slices equal more money for everybody, then that's where it makes sense, right? So you need that balance, and that's where I think the mysteries with you brought some good examples up with Northern Kentucky and Omaha, for example, being basketball only. That's where some deep analysis needs to be done. And I don't know if it does move the needle enough because, again, right now they're splitting their pie 11 ways. Now you got to split it 13 ways. So you need enough money to to make that worthwhile.
Last question. Kept you longer than I wanted to at this point. We dodged the bullet, expanding past 68. Is it just, did we just a 1 year hiatus? We're getting to 76 Probably. Sooner than later.
I think so. I don't know what the final number will land at. Obviously, there's a lot of disagreement in the room, but they continue to buy themselves a year. I think they bought themselves last year too, to just try to get it to a unanimous place. So thankful for that because I think we all appreciate the 68 format. In fact, a lot of us wanted to go back to 64. And if the way the at-large bids were distributed last year, where it was almost all high major. I mean, to me, I'm not as concerned about it as I used to be. I was more concerned about it because we were getting 10 to 12, non-power fives in the at-large pool, and that's just not the case now. So I'm not losing too much sweat, and I've kind of just accepted defeat, sadly.
He is Rocco Miller. You find his work at bracketier.org. Thank you so much for doing this, and we will catch up again soon once we get rolling with the season.
Anytime, Jeff. Great to be on. Thank you.
All right, there is Rocco Miller, and I mean, I think he kind of summed up the part at the end, just about the expansion. My expansion feelings, it's look, I think we'd all love to go back to 64, but in this world we live in now with these mega conferences, and I mean, I remember, it wasn't long ago when you would have the Big Ten or the SEC that got, the AC got 8, and then they got to 9 because the rules used to be you could not play a conference opponent in the NCAA tournament until the regional finals. That was just, they wanted to keep everybody apart until you got to the regional finals because that was just one of the bracketing principles they had. And then when, the conferences started getting bigger, the Big 10 became the Big 11 and then 12 and maybe 14. And then, so suddenly you got 8 teams, 9 teams in that they had to look, you had to put teams in the same bracket, and maybe you could hold them off till the Sweet 16, but they weren't going to be able to wait until the Final Four, the Elite Eight, whatever it may have been. Well, now you get the SEC with 14 teams last year. That it's just it is the at-large pool is just now overtaken by the big boys. And so as much, if you are ultimately a fan of mid-major basketball and you are a fan of mid-majors getting a seat at the table as the game continues to be rigged, as rigged is strong, but maybe accurate. And just a standpoint of things are being positioned now and the chess pieces being moved around where, ultimately it just makes it easier for the big boys to get in and get these at large components when they get to the end of the year and you got 25 quad one and quad two games because everybody in your league is a quad one, and it's hard. So if you go from 68, whether it's 72, whether it's 76, and as we've talked about before, are the mid majors going to get all 4 or all 8 of those mid major slots? Absolutely not. Can they get 2? Can they get 3? Maybe. You hope. And obviously that's not all going to the Valley. I mean, you've got the Atlantic 10. There's a lot of good conferences in our level that have suddenly turned into one bid leagues, the American and so on. That it's like, can they get a second or a third? Are those good conferences? Heck yeah. Do they have teams above the number 1 team that could get in there and win a game or 2 or make a run in the tournament, get to the Final Four? 100%. We have seen it time and time again in these last 15 years. And so if that is, if the end justifies the means, so be it. Obviously, like everything, this is all, and Rocco alluded to it, it's all going to come down to a money situation because, especially from the expansion level, are you going to expand? Is the tournament going to expand? Is there more money that's going to be pumped in? If not, that means everybody's pieces of the pie get a little bit smaller. And that is what the decision makers have to decide is it worth adding 8 more teams for whatever reason those decision makers may put in their mind of this is why we want to do this. But if everybody's going to make a little bit less money, maybe that's not such a good idea, even though the money will be or at least be distributed in different areas and to 8 more areas potentially. I don't know. I feel like still the traditionalist in me was happy that we did not expand and they hung tight at 68. But look, it's now been, I believe, 2021. So we've gone 4 years in a row without the Valley being a multi-bid league. And it feels like it's been long enough. So by all accounts, we've got a lot of really good teams in this league this year. Now, the question is, do we have any great teams? That will be the question. Do we have great teams that can separate themselves from the pack? Or is it going to be kind of that dog eat dog? And boy, you hope you can go 15-5 because every night's a meat grinder in the league. And, and then you may shoot yourself in the foot for at-large consideration. That's all part of the magic that will start 8 weeks from tonight, November the 3rd. When the 2025-26 season gets underway. All right. Thanks to Rocco Miller for being with us today. Thanks to you for being with us. If you haven't done so, please, please, please go to YouTube, subscribe for free to our channel, Morning in the Valley. All the past shows, all the past interview clips, broken down by school. So easily you can find your favorites. Very much appreciate the support there as we continue to grow with this. We'll be back on Wednesday morning, as always, here through the off season, say the non-conference, through the off season, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at 9 a.m. And that will be growing a little bit here soon enough as we start knocking the door on the new college basketball season. Thanks as always for your support. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. right here on Morning in the Valley.